there, my name is Katie Saints, and this presentation is on ACT therapy. So, what I want to go over is what is ACT, why should you use it, what assessments should you use in association with ACT, what is psychological flexibility and inflexibility, and then I'm going to go over some practice exercises so that we can feel comfortable implementing it. So let's jump in. I think this is a super powerful therapy method, and I think it's also super effective for increasing staff performance. So let's dive in. Why should you use ACT? Well, the research on ACT is crazy impressive. So what it tells us is that it addresses motivation problems. So have you ever worked with a client and they said they wanted to make change, but they just weren't making those behavioral changes? Well, ACT can help that. ACT taps into people's internal motivation. So ACT also decreases depression and anxiety. It helps people overcome the control that their emotions have over them. It gives them strategies for how to overcome those powerful emotions that sometimes prevent you from doing what you truly value. It can be used as staff training, and it's highly effective in that area as well. It helps people adapt to changing environments, and it helps people be better at being flexible and being adaptable and just handling stressful situations. So one strength of ACT is that it helps people stop avoiding things. It helps people to see things from a different perspective, and it helps people determine what's truly important to them and what actions they need to do in order to achieve those goals. So when we have behavior that's inconsistent with our values, it leads to burnout, it leads to depression and anxiety. We don't do okay with our mental health when our actions are not in line with our values. But the problem is a lot of people don't realize what their values are. They don't spend a lot of time thinking about breaking down the different areas of their life and determining what their values are. And so ACT helps you do that. And then ACT helps you figure out what action steps you need to take in order to achieve those goals. So there are 6 processes in ACT, and it really targets increasing psychological flexibility and decreasing psychological inflexibility. So it uses these processes to help people live a more meaningful life. And ACT is effective for children, adolescents, and adults. So that's super important to note too. It's effective with a wide variety of people. So what I would like you to do now is take the multidimensional psychological flexibility inventory. What this assessment is it was developed by Dr. Rogi, and he made an assessment to help determine people's levels of psychological flexibility and psychological inflexibility. And so I want you guys to all take this assessment so that as we learn about this process, you can internalize it and apply it to yourself. So each of the sections are scored on a scale of 1 to 6, 6 being the highest. And so you can determine what areas that you are low in based on the numbers. So add up each section points, and the sections with the lowest points tells you what you need to work on. So go ahead and take some time to take that assessment, and when we're done, we'll move on to the next activity. So I want to go over what the 6 processes are and kind of what their point is. So in the mindfulness and acceptance processes of ACT. We have acceptance, we have diffusion, and we have self as context. Those are aimed at helping people be more self-aware, helping people have a better perspective on their situation, and help people be okay with some of the bad things that come with our values. Sometimes it's hard to do the right thing. So if we get better at accepting that, we'll do the right thing more often. So then there's more of the commitment and behavior change processes of ACT. And those are contact with present moment, value, assessment, and committed action. Those are spelling out what exactly do I need to do to achieve these goals. So put in another way, present moment and self as context can help you be present in the moment, so you're aware of all the contingencies, you're aware of all the available reinforcement to you. Being present in the moment helps you enjoy the moment more and helps you avoid negative things because of you missing important stuff. So that's part of what's happening there. Acceptance and diffusion, it's kind of about opening up. When we're accepting the bad things that come with the good things, we're saying, yeah, to go to school, it's a lot of work, it might be stressful, but that stress is worth it because I really value education and I really value career advancement. Or, diffusion addresses some of your insecurities, like, hey, I'm really afraid to go to school because I think I'm going to fail. But if we work through that and we say, you know what, I think I'm going to fail, but I might not. So I'm going to try anyway. I'm not going to let that thought prevent me from trying. And so that's an important aspect as well. So then when we look at values and committed action, that's about doing what matters. So when we assess our values, that tells us what to prioritize. If we can determine what our most important values are, then that makes a map for us what actions we need to do. So once we clarify our values, then we can determine what actions we need to take. This is really important. So I want to break down the differences between psychological flexibility and psychological inflexibility. So every process and ACT has a corresponding process that's considered negative or counterproductive to reaching your goals. So I'm going to start with present moment awareness. So ACT wants you to be more aware of your actions, wants you to be more in the moment, being aware of your thoughts, your feelings, other people's thoughts and feelings, the contingencies related to your actions. Be fully present in the moment so that you can get the most out of it. The opposite of present moment awareness is lack of contact with the present moment. So that's when you're in autopilot. You're not really thinking about your actions. Have you ever driven somewhere and time has passed and you're like, holy cow, I'm like way farther than I realized. You zoned out. You weren't thinking about the present moment. And so you missed anything that happened there. You were maybe in your head thinking about tomorrow, thinking about your stress, thinking about what you said earlier in the day. So it's important to be in the present moment to fully get out of the present moment all of the potential reinforcement. So next, I want to talk about acceptance versus experiential avoidance. So acceptance says, this sucks, but I'm okay with that because it's something worth going through because of what I value. And so this is where people do hard things because it's important to them. When we do experiential avoidance, what we're doing is we are sabotaging our values and our goals because we don't like the pain we're experiencing. So for example, people who drink a lot of alcohol to escape pain, that's experiential avoidance. People who watch TV instead of work on their work or their homework, they're avoiding the tough things because it feels bad. But when we do that, we sabotage our goals and it's counterproductive. So ACT wants to work on you just accepting, like, hey, here's what I value, and here's the painful things that come with that, but it's worth it, and I'm going to do it anyway. So next is contextual self versus self as content. So this is a perspective-taking process in ACT. And so this process helps people look at themselves from different perspectives and can help identify different behaviors that they should be doing based on those different perspectives. So if we always look at things from our own perspective, that's going to cause some problems for us and that's going to limit our success. But if we can look at things from different processes, that's going to help us achieve things. Additionally, if we look at ourselves as self as content, then that's going to hurt our self-esteem. So what that means is, if your self-esteem is only good based on what your labels are, so I'm a runner, I'm a basketball player, I'm rich, I have a fancy car and a big house. If you lose any one of those things, that's going to wreck your self-esteem if that's what you're putting value in. So we need to not look at ourselves as content. We need to not have those labels define our value. So we need to look more at the process. So contextual self is a process of ACT that addresses that. And it helps you get action steps for how to be the things you value. So next I want to look at diffusion versus fusion. So sometimes we have fused thoughts that are counterproductive. There are a number of people who don't start school, don't apply for a promotion, don't ask a girl out that they think is cute because they think they're going to fail. They have these fused thoughts that may or may not be based in truth that tell them that they're not good enough, they're going to fail, it's not worth it. And so these fused thoughts are not helping them, they're getting in the way. So one of the processes of ACT is to address those fused thoughts so that they're not preventing people from reaching their goals. So people have these thoughts, but they overcome them and they work through them. So that's what we're trying to do in this process. So the next one is values versus lack of contact with values. So the reality is that most people don't take the time to really break down and think about what their values are and what's important to them in different areas of their life. So what I mean is breaking down relationship values, career values, leisure time values, health values. When we break down the different categories of our values, we'll learn a lot about ourselves and we'll learn a lot about what we are doing and not doing to help ourselves achieve what's important to us. The more we clarify what's important to us, the more it maps out for us what we should be doing with our time. So this provides motivation. What we value is what's going to make us feel best about life. If we're consistent with our values, our depression levels are going to go down. We're going to feel fulfilled. We're going to feel like we're living a meaningful life. And that's really important. That's what we're all here for, right? We want to live satisfying and meaningful lives. So we need to break down what it is that we need to do and achieve in order to have that kind of life. And ACT wants to support that. So the last step of this process is called committed action. So after you analyze all of those steps, then you need to make an action plan. Okay, we know what you value. We know how to get there. We know the different variables here. What do you actually need to do? What are some tangible action steps that you can do to help get you closer to your goals? So this step is so important. We need to define what your actions are that we want to target to get you closer to your goals. Okay, so let's look at the next step. So I want to give some examples based from Tuhig's Acceptance and Commitment Therapy Introduction. He gives some great examples of what some of these statements would look like based on if you're doing good in this category or if you need some work in this category. So I'm going to start with present moment awareness. So if you're doing good in this category, this is something that you could say about yourself. I flexibly pay attention to what's occurring in the present moment. If you're struggling, you would say something like, I spend most of my time on autopilot, going through the emotions. So the next one is acceptance. If you're doing really well in this category, you would say something like, I willingly accept my thoughts and feelings, even if they feel bad, even if I don't like them. If you're struggling in this category, you would say something like, I constantly struggle with my thoughts and feelings and I try to avoid them. The next one is diffusion. So if you're doing good in this category, you would say something like, I see my thoughts as just one of the many things I think about. What I do next is up to me and my thoughts don't get to determine that. If you're struggling in this area, you would say something like, my thoughts tell me what to do and what the truth is. So what diffusion really wants to point out is sometimes our thoughts lie to us. Sometimes our thoughts say things that are so counterproductive, and we want to give you power over your thoughts. So that's what this process really tries to help and address. So next is self as context. If you're doing well in this category, you would say something like, the person I call me knows what I am thinking and feeling, but is distinct from that process. I recognize I am separate from my thoughts and feelings. If you're struggling in this category, you would say something like, the person I call me is my thoughts and feelings. And if I have bad emotions, then I am bad. So next is values. So if you're doing well in this category, something you would maybe say to yourself is, I am clear about what I choose to value and the actions that I need to do in order to get closer to my values. If you're struggling in this category, you would say something like, I honestly don't know what I want out of life. I'm struggling to clarify what action steps I need to do that would bring meaning to my life. So those are the 6 processes of ACT and examples of the spectrum that you could be on. The great news is about ACT therapy is if you're on the low end of the spectrum where you're struggling with it, we can help you. We can work through that. So I want to go through that process a little bit more with you guys. So next, I want to break down what psychological inflexibility is, because this is part of the process that prevents us from achieving our goals and our values. So first, I want to talk about experiential avoidance. If you are highly experiential avoidance, you're running from things that are important to you. So say you really like a friend, but you're afraid of being rejected, you don't call them. They ask you to hang out and you tell yourself, nah, I don't want to. They're just going to reject me anyway. So when we're experiential avoidance, we are missing out on important things. So I want to help you guys get tough on not avoiding what's important to you. I want you to recognize that you have the temptation to run away, but you're not going to do it. Whether it's insecurities or thoughts or feelings or it's just really challenging, I want you to do it anyway, even though it's hard. Okay, next one. Lack of contact with the present moment. So here's the reality. When we're not thinking about what's important to us, we can do things and say things that don't line up with our values. So say I value being a really, really good wife, but I'm mean to my husband and I'm crabby because I don't feel good. If I don't feel good, I might not be thinking about how important it is for me to be sweet to my husband. But if that's present in my mind, if I'm in the moment and I'm thinking about what's important to me, I'm going to make better actions and I'm going to enjoy my husband more. So being in the present moment helps us get more out of the moment. We miss important things when we're not fully present. So next I want to talk about fusion. Our thoughts are powerful and sometimes we give them way more power than they deserve. So every person alive has thoughts about not being good enough, about fear of failure, fear of rejection. We have all these thoughts. Some of us are really anxious, and we're good at predicting things that could go wrong. If we let those thoughts control us, we will not achieve our goals. We have to proceed even when our thoughts tell us not to. So fusion and diffusion strategies are working on us overcoming our thoughts so they don't control us. We are in charge, not them. Next is self as content. So this is really important for us to look at situations from other perspectives. When we just look at it from our perspective, that limits our social skills, that limits our understanding of all the dynamics in play. We need to have a fuller picture and we need to view ourselves broader than that. So if we want to be successful at work, we need to think about, what do my actions look like from my boss's perspective? This process is going to help us have a broader perspective on who we are and what our situation is. Next, I want to talk about lack of contact with values. If we don't take the time to think about what we value and why, then we don't have a map or a compass for where we want to go. We need to define what our values are so that we can achieve those goals. What we value is going to give us the most meaning in life. So we need to define that. We need to take the time to break that down so we know exactly what that is. So the last step I want to talk about is inaction. This is the most important step because we can talk about all these things, but if we don't change our behavior, it means nothing. So we need to make an action plan. We need to come up with the specific, measurable, tangible steps that will help us achieve these goals. This is super important. All right, let's go to the next step. So, if you are human, you experience barriers. So, I value a lot of things, but sometimes there's barriers that make those things difficult to achieve. So, let's talk about barriers. There's internal barriers and there's external barriers. So, let me give you some examples of internal barriers. Those are your emotions, your mood, your motivation, your health. Today I'm experiencing back pain, and that made it really difficult for me to go on a run. I was way slower than normal. But using the principles of ACT therapy, I went on a run. I accepted the pain that came with it due to my back, and I was willing to do it anyway because I value my health and I value going on a run. And I recognized that I wasn't going to hurt myself by running even though I had some back pain. So I was able to achieve my value by accepting the pain that went with it. So we have these values, but we have barriers that prevent us from achieving it. Sometimes these barriers are really powerful and they're hard to overcome. So it's important to identify them so we can work on some solutions to overcome them. So sometimes there's external barriers. So this could be your finances. For example, say you want to go to school, but you can't afford to pay for it. That's an external barrier. Say you want to connect with another person, but they're not willing to talk to you. That's an external barrier. So There are a lot of different external and internal barriers. I want you to take some time to think about what are the barriers you're experiencing that are preventing you from achieving some of your goals that are super important to you. Then the next step, once you identify those variables, are to make some plans. How do you get around those barriers? How can you overcome those barriers? And if you don't know the answer, talk to other people. Find some people who can help you figure out how to overcome those barriers. Okay, so next, I want to go through a value clarification exercise. This is super important. If you don't take the time to do this, you're not going to know fully what your values are. So step one is health. Let's define our health values. So think about your values in regards to your physical health, your physical well-being. What are your intentions in regard to diet, exercise, smoking, alcohol, self-care? What would the healthiest version of you look like? What's important to you regarding your health? What do you need to change? I want you to make some value statements regarding your health. So I'm going to tell you mine that are very specific to give you an example of what kind of goals I want you to write for yourself. So I want to eat healthy for 19 of the 21 meals I eat a week, assuming I eat 3 meals a week. I want to be physically active 6 days a week and actually do intensive workouts 3 to 5 days a week. I want to never drink so much that I'm hungover. I want to also do self-care stuff for my mental health on a daily basis. So now what I want you to do from there, once you make your value statement, is write your value goals. What are the action steps you need to do in order to achieve your goals? All right, let's go to relationships. Write down a description of the person you want to be in your various relationships. So this could be divided into your romantic relationship, your children, your family, your friends. What is the ideal you in those categories? Break down how you want those relationships to look. Who do you want to be? How do you want to act in those relationships? So, for me, my statements would be, in my marriage, I want to be daily affectionate with physical and verbal affirmation for my husband. For my kids, I want to be present and active. And for my family, I want to contact them frequently. For my friends, I want to give them enough time and make sure they know that I value them. So those are some examples of things I would say about myself. So take some time to think about that and what you would want to do. And then write some action steps, some tangible things you could do today to help you get closer to that goal. Next, I want you to think about your career. So in your current job, write down the type of employee or manager you want to be. What qualities or strengths do you want to show? How do you want people to view you? How do you want to interact with your coworkers? What do you need to do in order to achieve that? So some examples of what I wrote down are, I always want to be learning. I always want to be pursuing more knowledge so I can more effectively help people. I want to be kind in all of my communication. I want to make sure that everyone I supervise knows how I value them and why. I don't want to ever compromise my ethics due to social implications. And I want to make sure that when people work hard, they know their hard work is appreciated. So next, I want you to look at leisure time. Describe what would bring you fulfillment in your leisure time. So what kind of hobbies or sports or leisure activities do you want in your life that would make you feel good about, yeah, I use my free time really well and I have a lot of fun? So what does that look like? So for me, I want hobbies for inside my home and outside my home, as in outdoors. I want individual families that just I do, but then I want hobbies that I do with my whole family, my husband and my kids. Then I want to be able to do my hobbies like 5 days a week, even if it's just for 30 minutes. I want to make sure I have time to do that. So from your value statements, make some action steps. What do you need to do then in order to get closer to those values that you just identified? All right, next one, personal growth. How do you want to improve yourself? How do you want to grow? What's important to you? What do you want to learn? Language, spiritual, whatever it may be. How can you improve yourself? What do you value in this area? So some things that I wrote down were, I want to always be doing something that's going to help me be better professionally, personally, and relationally. I want to always be open to feedback and criticism so I can learn how to improve when I don't see those things in myself. I never want to accept dysfunction in myself. I want to recognize it and improve it. Also, I want to always have personal growth goals for myself, such as complain less or give more compliments to friends, stuff like that. So what are your action steps? What are your goals in this area, and what are some tangible things that you can do to improve in this area? All right, so next I'd like you to take this assessment. It is a value consistency assessment, and what it does is, the first one, you're rating on a scale of 1 to 10 what's important to you in these 10 categories, and then in the next assessment, you rate your consistency. So say you gave yourself a 10 for family is super, super important to me. I'm giving that a 10 as an important value of mine. Then I want you to honestly look at yourself and say, how am I actually doing with that? On a scale of 1 to 10, can I give myself a 10? Is that accurate? Am I perfect at fulfilling my family values, or could I improve in that? So give yourself an honest score in what you think that you can achieve or are rating as in these sections. So go ahead and take some time to do that. All right. So now what I want you to do is find someone to practice with. I want you to, based on the assessments we just did, I want you to pick your lowest category, the category of your values that you are rating yourself the lowest in currently. So I want you to pick one of your goals that you'd like to improve on. And with a partner, I'd like you to talk about what barriers are preventing you from achieving that goal. And so once you guys talk about the barriers, then I want you to go ahead and go through the 6 processes of ACT and use those processes to help you make progress on that goal that you just identified. So, okay, I'm going to give you guys some time to do that, and then we're going to go through the different processes. So, first, the process that, after you've talked about the barriers, the process that I want you to explore is present moment. How can you, being more present, help you achieve this goal? Take some time to talk about that. Think about that. Feel free to pause this video in order to do these activities. So what can you do in the present? How can being in the present moment help you achieve this goal? Or how is it hurting you? How are you avoiding the present moment, making it more difficult for you to achieve this goal? Next, acceptance. What are the crappy things about this goal that you need to accept, that you need to just be okay with? What comes with this thing that you want to achieve that you have to just be okay with? That, you know what, it takes some hard work. Some nights I might cry. I might go to bed in tears because this was so hard, but it's worth it. Take some time to talk about that. What are those things? Next, diffusion. What thoughts are getting in the way? What insecurities? What harmful things is your brain saying to you that's making it hard for you to achieve your goals? Take some time to think about that. Values. What are your values? So we just went through those value clarification exercises. So why is this so important to you? Why is this your value? Take some time to really explore that. Why is it meaningful to you? Why did you pick this as a value? Okay, next. Committed action. What are your action steps? Pick tangible things that you could really do today to get you closer to your goal. So explore what's something that's really meaningful that you could do that would help you get closer to this value. This will bring you meaning. Okay, so now I want you guys to conclude your conversation, and I just want to remind you that ACT can help you make some really meaningful life change. If you want to implement this strategy with clients, I strongly recommend that you do it with yourself and master it on yourself. Not that anyone is ever perfect at it, because none of us are, and that's okay. But I want you to use it on yourself before you're trying to use it with clients, because I think that it can create really meaningful life change in all of us. And many of us are in the helping field who are listening to this presentation, and that field, the burnout is so high. So if we can connect to our values, if we can be good at working through these processes, we're going to be more effective. We're going to be better employees. We're going to be better family members. We're going to be better friends. And so this stuff can provide some meaningful change. So thank you for listening to me, and please let me know if you have any questions as you practice working through your ACT skills.